don't know if I really love this decision.
Over the middle, got his man, and look at him go! Jalen Waddle for the touchdown!
Welcome to Inside Leverage, your gateway to the fascinating realm of the Miami Dolphins. Join us as we delve deep into the team's dynamic Super Bowl journey. We invite you to share your most scorching takes, unwind, and relish in our captivating experience.
Nick, appreciate you taking your time out. Appreciate everybody that's here. We got our guest speaker, and so Nick, can you just give us a rundown of a little background so the listeners can know? We know who you are, but we want our listeners to know who you are. Once again, appreciate you coming.
All right, thank you guys. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Well, first and foremost, I played in the NFL for about 10 seasons. And before that, I played in the CFL for another 3 seasons. I'm actually born and raised in Miami. I went to Miami Jackson High School. And
nice.
since I played for the Texans, the Broncos, and the Jets. So I spent the bulk of my career in the AFC for sure. It's interesting that we have this matchup between the Broncos and the Miami Dolphins because my dad is a longtime Dolphin fan, as most of the people in my family are. And the last time when I was playing, either for the Jets, the Texans, or the Broncos, my dad would always wear my jersey, but we'd always wear a Miami Dolphins hat because he still supports his team. So, yeah, man, I've been in media for a while since retiring, and I cover the Broncos out here for KOA, and I'm part of the Broncos game day entertainment team out here in Denver. And this game is very interesting because, believe it or not, there are a couple of coaches who I coached with in San Francisco when I was coaching, Mike McDaniel being another one. And what's interesting about Mike McDaniel, my first year after I left the Jets and joined the Denver Broncos, Mike started out as a ball boy, and his relationship with Kyle Shanahan led him to being involved with the team much more than he was kind of doing some scouting stuff. So it's amazing to see that his growth and maturity has led to him being a head coach in the NFL.
Well, Nico, that's dope. That's super dope. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, they appreciate you coming through, taking the time. Wanted to start you off by saying your overall thoughts so far on the Broncos, the head coach Sean Payton. Overall, what are your thoughts so far on the team as we head to week 3?
Well, unlike people locally and some nationally, I'm not as down on the team as most people are. And I know that's crazy because when you think that, okay, the Broncos are 0-2, the Chargers are 0-2, and the Bengals are all 0-2. And I know statistically it is said that teams that start out 0-2 really don't make the playoffs. But I think you have to look at how you are losing games. This team is not the same that it was last year under Nathaniel Hackett. We've seen from week 1 to week 2 that the Broncos were able to muster up more points than they did last season. Last season, they couldn't get over 12 points. And that was kind of an indictment on the scheme and also an indictment on Russell. But if you watch Sunday's game, which I definitely hope you guys go back and do, you saw the Broncos do a lot of things that they were not doing offensively last year. And Russell, who's known for being one of the better deep ball quarterbacks, throwing quarterbacks that is in the NFL, he seemed to have gotten on track. The problem was the production offensively in the first half kind of fizzled out in the second half because they were not getting as many explosive plays, which brings me to another interesting point. Being as though the Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator Vic Fangio has once coached with the Denver Broncos, and knowing as though Sean Payton wanted Vic Fangio as his defensive coordinator, but he chose to go to Miami. That's a storyline that's going to make the game on Sunday that much more interesting. And then knowing that some of the guys who are currently on the Broncos roster were not true favorites of Vic Fangio. So we're going to see how that all plays out. Bradley Chubb was one of those guys who I hated to see leave, but I felt as though GM George Payton put him in a great spot. He went to Miami. He got paid more money, so he's in a better spot. He's with Vic Fangio, but it's going to make the game really interesting because, as a player, you know that you're going to move around. But sometimes if you're blessed enough and you play long enough, you get a chance to face your own team. So it's going to be interesting to see how these two teams play against one another.
Wally, then Chad, then Steve.
Man, appreciate you, Nick. I'm gonna go ahead and jump jump the room because I know the real question that French wants to ask is: are you Team Seatler or Team Wilkins? And aside from that, my brother, what do you think about our defensive line, man? Especially Christian Wilkins.
Well, you know what? Christian Wilkins, collectively, they do a great job. And that was the one thing, with Vic Fangio, and you watched him over the years, and you have to go all the way back to Dome Patrol when he was there with those guys in New Orleans. And he does a great job of trying to scheme guys free. And, this game is all about being able to get after the quarterback. And you guys have some talent on that roster that I'm sure that the Broncos are going to have to deal with. I mean, the offensive line had a tough sledding when they faced a lot of those first rounders from the Commanders. So it's going to be the same thing, and you hope that they come out on top. But once again, when you have guys who can pin their ears back, they can get after the quarterback, they can go speed to power, and they use their hands well, that can put pressure on your offense, and it can dictate what you do offensively. So if you're able to corral Russell Wilson and take away the passing away from him, now you force him to be somewhat of a running team, and no team wants to play with one hand tied behind their backs.
Hey, Nick, man, appreciate you coming through, man, and giving us some of your valuable time, man, and valuable insight. You said you had time with Mike McDaniel and Shanahan, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. What could you speak to that dynamic between those two and your time about a little about your time about with Mike McDaniel in San Francisco, and what are your thoughts on his overall evolution as a play caller and offensive mastermind, and on our thoughts on our offense going into this game?
I'll start with the last thing first. Mike is a very smart guy, as everyone knows, and he was a sponge. Anytime you've been around the Mike Shanahan tree, there's a lot of information that you can absorb because everywhere that Kyle has gone, Mike McDaniels has been a part of it. Washington, Cleveland, San Francisco. And like I said, starting off here under Kyle's father and Mike Shanahan. And I'll tell you this personally, like when I coached with the 49ers, I would sit in the box, the coach's box. And Kyle had a direct link to Mike McDaniels. And when Kyle was a little on the fence as far as what plays to run, when to run them, he would always kind of defer to Mike to kind of get his input as to what was he thinking. And I think those are great qualities from a coach because some coaches and some people, we do it too. We think that we know everything. That's the last thing you want to do because it sets you up for failure. And Kyle relied on, McDaniels a lot. So that's why when you see some of the innovative things we see with the Miami Dolphins, we see Mike being able to put his own fingerprints on it. And once again, this is why you see a lot of the same players who were on that San Francisco with the Miami Dolphins. So having Jeff Wilson there, having Raheem Mostert there, those things are really important, and that's why Mike McDaniels brought those guys over, because they understood his philosophy and what he wants to do. And all you have to do is kind of look at the game plan every Sunday that he draws up for Tua. I know there are a lot of people who've said some negative things about Tua, and some of those people who are on, I guess, popular networks, I shall not call their name, but you guys know who I'm talking about, said some, really body shaming things about Tua. And now those people are eating their words 2 weeks into the season, because Tua is a decent quarterback. You don't play well in Alabama, then come to the pros and forget how to play. It's all on the coordinator to basically put that player in a great position to be successful. And when you have a guy, or two guys for that matter, outside, like Jalen Waddle, who I think is going to be injured for this game due to the concussion protocol, maybe he play on Sunday, and a guy like Tyreek Hill, I mean, that's an offensive coordinator and quarterback dream. It just reminds me of what Dan Marino had when he had Duper and Clayton, but the two guys that Tua have are much faster than Duper and Clayton. And when you have those types of weapons outside, it allows you as an offensive coordinator to draw up all types of schemes, because the defense is terrified of Tyreek Hill's speed. And I can tell you, man, I watched it firsthand coaching with the San Francisco 49ers. It is real, it is raw, and it will hurt you in the vertical passing game. So your safeties have to be on point. And that's something that Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson, the two safety for the Denver Broncos, will have to make sure that they're aware of on Sunday.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, you were actually kind of touching on something I wanted to ask. We all know how good Patrick Surtain Jr. is. How do you feel the defense lines up against the wide receivers of Miami's offense with the speed, just kind of, talent wise and athletically?
Well, first and foremost, with the fact that Jalen Waddle is currently in concussion protocol, and let's just say he doesn't play, it makes things that much easier, because the matchup is going to be Pat Surtain on Tyreek Hill and Damari Mathers on whomever is playing opposite. So if Waddle doesn't play, it makes it a little more interesting, because now you're talking about Braxton Berrios or River Craycraft, another guy. River Craycraft was here with the Broncos a couple years ago in training camp. So it takes the pressure off of them in that particular way. But once again, going back to Mike McDaniels, he's going to look at the Broncos defense. He's going to say, well, Eric Bieniemy ran these types of things for Josh Dotson last week when the Broncos faced them. What can we exploit in the vertical passing game to get some of our guys open? Now, Sam Howell, in my opinion, is a little more athletic than Tua, but Tua will still run. And what I'm banking on is, based on Tua's concussions, he's not going to try to get out of pocket and try to beat Lamar Jackson. If something opens, he'll go ahead and take it. But for the most part, what I'm telling, if I'm the Broncos defensive coordinator, Vance Joseph, I'm telling my guys to get upfield, know the quarterback depth and where he's going to be, because most likely he's going to be right there when you get there. And you have to make sure you maintain those lanes inside, because we all know pass rush and coverage in the back end, they go hand in hand. And if you can't get after the quarterback, I don't care who he is, it could be either of us, but if you can't get after him, that's going to leave so many passes open downfield. So it's going to be interesting to see how they match up as far as skilled players are concerned.
Brandon.
Yeah, hi. I was thinking, how is your offensive line going to hold, or the Broncos' offensive line going to hold up? They struggled a lot with pressures on Russell Wilson with the Commanders in the most recent game, and we also have a pretty strong defensive line, and I'm pretty sure Phillips is going to be back. And we, as you can see, we did pretty well against the Patriots' offensive line as well.
Well, here's the thing. When you look at the Week 2 stats, I mean, the Broncos defense is better against the run than the Miami Dolphins defense has. So the first thing I would think is it's easy, simple. You got to establish the run game, and that doesn't necessarily mean just handing the ball off to your running backs. That means getting your running backs involved, running routes, getting them out in space with linebackers to make them very difficult to tackle in the open space. That's what you want to do. The last thing you want to do is kind of be in a situation where you're in third and long, second and long situations, and those guys don't even have to worry about the run. I mean, just imagine being an edge rusher and say, listen, all we want you to do is just get upfield and wreak havoc. So no, the idea is to want to make those guys guess. And for me, I don't know what Sean Payton's game plan, but I want to make those guys think on the run. I want to make them move left to right. So I'm running outside stretch zone plays to make those guys kind of widen. And then once I getting them on those positions where they start to wide, then I can run my play action, go into my play action playbook, and then take shots down the field. And once again, when you look at the defense that Vic runs, he doesn't run a lot of man. He runs a lot of match coverage. And what I mean by that is that whatever defender's in that area, you're going to match whatever guy is in that area. And also, they do a lot of zone dropping. And that means, like, if you have to drop to 10 yards, you got to drop to 10 and hit your landmark. So what you're able to do in that case is you're able to run routes, what we call lever routes, which means that you're going to run 3 routes on the same side of the field, and you're going to put 2 defenders in the bind and make them decide which guy you're going to take. You're going to take the deep guy or you're going to take the shallow. Doesn't make a difference. You're wrong every time. But now that means Russell has to be accurate with his throws and getting back to the offensive line. If they allow the same level of penetration that they allowed in the Washington game, it's going to be a long day for Sean Payton and Russell Wilson.
Hey, I just wanted to ask, since we're talking about trenches a little bit, I'm a trench guy, so I want to know who's on both sides of the ball, the trenches, who is your 1 or 2 guys that the Dolphins need to keep an eye on, specifically 2 guys on the defense and just and your offensive lineman.
Well, from the Broncos defensive side, the guys that you definitely want to be aware of is Randy Gregory, and the other guy is Jonathan Cooper. Right now, I think Cooper has 2 sacks on the season, should have had more in the game on Sunday, and Randy Gregory is long. He's very athletic. He was able to get his first sack of the season on Sunday. So these are 2 guys that can bend and turn the corner. They're both athletic. And Jonathan Cooper, man, that guy has a high motor. And, I mean, coming out of Ohio State, this was a guy who you thought would probably be a 3rd-day pick, going the 3rd round, but he wasn't due to a heart condition. And to see that he somehow turned his playing career around and he still has a high motor, knowing as though he was dealing with a heart injury, that's a guy who knows his blessings, and he is thankful to play this game. And every time he touches the field, man, he's going all out. So that would be one. Those would be 2 guys you definitely want to make sure that you are aware where they are on the field. There's another guy too who was drafted in the 2nd round out of Oklahoma, Nick Bonito. Nick Bonito's issue was he was only used to getting upfield and not being an every down player, but based on what the Broncos were able to do with him and bringing his college coach to the team, he has quickly developed into a good young edge rusher, and he applied a lot of pressure on Sunday against Sam Howell. So those would be the 3 guys that you would have to stop, and if they're able to stop them, they'll be able to get into a passing rhythm.
What about your
French, go ahead.
secondary? What about your? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Was somebody?
Yeah, we got hands.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
French, go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Nick, can you hear me?
Oh, okay.
Hey, Nick, thank you for your time. I had a question for you. Just talking about your secondary, what do you see as the challenges and what McDaniel's offense can pose for the secondary of the Broncos? And second part, are you a gambling man? Typically in these pages, we typically like to do
Push-ups. You need push-ups. You got a soda challenge. Whatever
either,
stuff's on soda challenge, man. Hey.
hold on, Wally. Hold on. We give you 3 options, Nick. If you believe that your Broncos are going to win a game, you could either do the 25 push-ups, the Avi bet, or you could drink a cold Sprite. So I'll listen and wait.
All right, so I'll say this. I don't drink soda pop anymore, so the Sprite is out. I'm not a gambling man, but for this.
Friendly Abby bet? Friendly Abby?
Well, you know what? I'm a push-up guy. Right. So if I do bet, then the 25 push-ups would definitely be the bet. But I'll say this: when you look at the Broncos secondary, they are a little banged up, but they're that's a talented secondary, and they have some young guys in the back end, and hopefully the Broncos don't have a situation in Miami as they had last week here at home against the Commanders, where Kareem Jackson was ejected out of the game for what one could say could be his second questionable call in 2 weeks. So if they stay with their starting guys, that's a nice group of guys who can cover, who can tackle. But once again, man, I mean, when you face a talented receiving core like the Dolphins have, it's going to make any secondary group challenging. The saving grace is that you have Patrick Surtain, a guy who knows how to cover. When you cover guys like Devontae Adams and you make it a long day for that guy, I mean, you have to think that he's up for the challenge against Tyreek Hill. And the one thing about Tyreek that a lot of guys who face up against him, they're so afraid of his speed that they immediately open the gate and turn it into a track meet. To me, with a guy that fast, you can't turn it into a foot race because he's going to win every single time. The idea is to disrupt the timing of the route with Tua and make Tyreek work at the line. Even if he eventually beats you upfield, you take Tua off his first read. That's all you want to do. You want to take him off his first read and make him go somewhere else. So the idea and the game plan should be this week, eliminate the explosive plays. And sometimes what that means for certain defensive coordinators, that means that you're going to lie in a zone coverage for the majority of the game. And I think for me, that's stupid. Because if you sit in zone, all he's going to do, run curls, run slants, find open spots, run dig routes at 12 to 15 yards, sit there, and Tua's just going to throw it to him. You have to challenge the wide receivers at some point. You have to gamble because if you sit in zone, that doesn't allow your edge rush to get to the quarterback and you're making easy throws. I mean, for Tua, it's like playing against the JV football team at that point. So you have to challenge receivers at the line of scrimmage because you want to be able to make that quarterback think and come off his first, second reads.
Yeah, we showed the motion that's not going to work. They tried, but go ahead, Wally.
Thank you, Nick. Just make sure those push-ups are turned in
All
for
right,
inside.
so before I ask this question, French, your mic sucks, so cut it out. Your Vance Joseph, is he still running that version of a white nine tech?
Well, with his defense, it's kind of like Vic Fangio. You have the bend but don't break type of defense. But once again, with both sides of the ball, you're going to have to get up and challenge receivers. You're not going to be able to just sit back in the zone and just kind of put all the pressure on your pass rushers and say,
That's
well,
fine
hey,
and
you get
dandy.
home.
Listen, Tyreek, and the wide receivers. Listen, Craig Crab gonna have a bunch of catches on your DBs. I ain't worried about none of that, dude. Whatever you guys do, they gonna eat. But I'm worried about. I want to know about your linebackers in the open field because most of these schemes they depend on linebackers to be in an open field covering of Braxton Berrios and A-Chain and Monster or anybody we have coming out the backfield. So how are your linebackers in the open field and coverage?
Well, our linebackers are not the fleetest of foot. And what I mean by that, they're not these, 4-4 types of linebackers, but they do get downhill well. And basically, once again, knowing Mike McDaniels and knowing how that offense works, they'll run plays where they try to get the back fast to the flat. That's where you have to be smart because, when I played, there was a guy that played linebacker who just went into the Hall of Fame for the Miami Dolphins, and he wasn't the biggest, he wasn't the fastest, but the one thing that Zach Thomas did do, he understood the game where he understood where receivers were going to be positioned, and he can get himself in position to make plays. Now, I'm not saying that Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton can do the same thing, but that's what they're going to have to rely on. And just to kind of give you an example, see, offensives hide what they're going to do in plain sight. You just have to be willing to identify it. And knowing this offense the way that I do, they like to scat their backs out. And what I mean by that, get them out quick to the flat. And the only way you do that is that back is offset to the right or left of that quarterback. And when you see a tight end or a wide receiver with a minus split, and what I mean by that, inside the numbers, you have to figure that they're trying to wash everything down from a coverage standpoint to get that running back out to the flat. And sometimes it creates natural picks. So that is what the linebackers are going to have to do. Now, oh, by the way, the Broncos have some guys on their roster defensively that they can insert into the lineup, and they haven't done it yet. And one guy being Drew Sanders. Drew Sanders played at Alabama, played linebacker at Alabama and edge rusher, and then he transferred to Arkansas. This is a big, long, physical kid who can run. I think he runs a 4.5. So if I am Vance Joseph, I'm trying to get him on the field when Miami kind of gets into their NASCAR type of formation with their speed guys, because you want him to be able to recognize what they're trying to do and also be able to have the foot quickness to stay with those guys.
Brando in chat.
Oh, my bad. Someone there?
Yeah, Brando. But
So you talked about how that they're going to be focusing on the run game. How are you feeling about Javonte Williams this year? It seems like he's not getting as much, as much big plays and stuff. I feel like he's struggling a little bit more this year. I just wanted your thoughts on that, since you said the run game's got to be there.
Well, keep this in mind. I mean, Javonte is doing something that most athletes can't do, let alone regular average Joe people. This dude shredded his knee almost, 6, 8 months ago, and he's back on the field. And he still runs with the same level of toughness he did before he had the injury. Now, Javonte didn't have a lot of explosive plays last year, but he had explosive runs. And an explosive run is a run that's over 4 to 6 yards. So he had a couple of those against Washington. We just haven't seen them in great abundance because Sean Payton is still trying to find a rhythm with this offense. But if I am any of those Dolphins players, I'm not going to sleep on him. Once again, I implore you to go back and watch the Washington game this past Sunday and watch the type of physicality that he runs with. And to me, I mean, I wasn't born when Earl Campbell played, but I've seen the videos. He's got the Earl Campbell type of way of running, and so does Samaje Perine. So if you come in there slipping, I mean, either you're going to end up on one of these dudes' highlights or they're going to run through your sternum.
yeah, Chuck.
Hey Nick, again, want to thank you for taking the time to join us, man. Appreciate you. Just wanted to say, overall, what are some things that you think going into this game will be the keys to victory from the Denver standpoint? I don't know if you want to maybe give like about 2 or 3 things from each side that you think could play into the have major impacts on the game overall.
Well, first and foremost, it is penalties. Like you can't get penalties that are drive killers, either on the offensive side, drive killers, or on the defensive side, drive extenders. So you have to make sure that you're solid. And over the past 2 games, the Broncos have been heavily penalized. Now, at the same time I say that, there are some thoughts that maybe due to the fact that their head coach is Sean Payton, and he might have ruffled some feathers when he was in New Orleans, that some of those calls are not going the Broncos' way, even though they should. But you never want to put it in the hands of the officials and the referees. So it's going to be penalties, but more importantly, protection. I mean, last game against the Commanders, Russell Wilson was hit 10 times, he was hurried 31 times, and he was sacked 7 times. Those are not the numbers that you want as a revamped offensive line. So if I had to say that, those would be the 2 things that the Broncos would have to avoid if they have a hope of leaving Miami with the victory.
And what would you say from the Miami side would be a couple of things you could pinpoint that'd be keys for us? against you guys?
Well, Miami running, as far as the defensive side is, not giving up a lot of running plays. And also, you go back to the game against Justin Herbert and the Chargers. I mean, that game there was somewhat of a shootout. So, with as good as the D line has been performing as far as edge rush, they still have to get better in the back end. That starts with being able to communicate, but more importantly, running Vic Fangio's scheme to perfection. Because let's not forget, he does run a bend but don't break defense. He runs a lot of match zones. And in those zone situations, it leaves a lot of holes open for run after catch. So they're going to have to try to do a great job. And here's what the Broncos put on display last week. Jerry Jeudy made his return after being out with a hamstring injury. And you got to think, he wasn't the main guy involved in the offense, and neither was Cortland Sutton. You had the rookie Marvin Mims Jr., and then you had Brandon Johnson. Those two guys were involved with the offense for the catches and the touchdowns that they made. But once again, if you're able to get all of those guys involved, it's going to make this game really interesting, and it's not going to be like a one-sided affair where it's like, oh, the Dolphins have Tyreek Hill. It's a cut and dry situations. Don't forget, this is still the NFL, and you don't need one or two wide receivers. You need 3, 4. And I know you got River Craycraft, you got Braxton Berrios. Those two guys are slot receivers. They can find the soft spot. They are like the Wes Welkers of the NFL, right? So, as from a defensive perspective, you don't have to worry about those guys taking the top off the defense. If you're able to somehow try to neutralize some of the explosive plays, which is going to be hard with Tyreek Hill, now your zone defenders can defend all those short intermediate routes and the crossing routes for Craycraft and Berrios as well.
Junior. Hey, I wanted to kind of go back to the Drew Sanders. I know you mentioned his speed as a linebacker, which can kind of help with the coverage on defense. Do you get a little concerned with is he a rookie, right? I think you get concerned with his inexperience. If you want to give him that big of a role, do you get concerned about that?
No, because the kid, since he touched the field in rookie minicamp, we all knew that he was different. He might be a rookie, but he's a little different. Keep this in mind. He did go to Alabama, and he did play for Nick Saban. So that tells you that he's been coached hard. He likes to be coached hard, and he understands the game of football, which means he has a good football IQ. And just think about it. You make the game plan easy, right? If you want to match up with Raheem Mostert or any of the Miami Dolphins running backs, just like my old coach Herm Edwards would say, you call it cat coverage, which means you got that cat. Wherever he goes, you follow him. I want you to be his shadow. So if that is something that is deployed and Drew Sanders is given that responsibility, I have all the faith in the world that he can do
it. Go ahead,
I just
Steve.
wanted to ask how with the new coach, how are you feeling about Russ? Have you seen a start to that resurgence of Russ, or is he still kind of floating around where he was near the end of the year last year?
Well, I'm going to tell you this. I don't know if you guys have seen the past couple of games, but he's not the Russ of last year. Russell looks more confident in this offense when he has time to throw the ball. His decision making has been so much better. Finding those wide receivers down the field on those deep throws were great. Once again, if you go back and you watch the explosive to Marvin Mims on his 2 passes, great touch by Russell Wilson, especially the pass he threw to Marvin Mims on the left side of the Commander's sideline. I mean, it had distance. And when you talk about a perfect ball that dropped right in the bucket over the defender, you can't get any better than that. And I know both locally and nationally, everyone wants to attack Russ. But I say when you watch the film, it will reveal a lot of things if you know exactly what you're looking for. Is he where he needs to be? No. But knowing as though he's already thrown 5 touchdowns and 1 interception, it's far better than where Russell was last year around this time. And if you were to go check the stats, you would see that Russell's probably in the top 5 or top 8 as far as quarterbacks in the league in passing rating.
Oh, Wally, go ahead.
Oh yeah, man, Nick, I appreciate you, man. But listen, I asked you the first question. I think you dodged my question, man. I asked you whether you were Team Sealer or Team Wilkins, and if so, I know you said you wasn't a betting man, you're not a gambling man, but I have wagers with a certain individual that's one of the Inside Leverage boys, a preacher, Mr. French over there. And I have a strong wager going with him that Christian Wilkins again will lead the team, will lead at least Seatler in sacks again. So, what are your feelings towards that, Mr. Nick? And thank you so much for your presence and your answers.
Well, first of all, those sacks, they come in bunches, but you can't press to make a sack. And it all depends on, are you winning your one-on-ones, or is your defensive coordinator calling some kind of game that is going to get you free? We see it all the time when teams run TE stunts. You have a guy who starts upfield and he loops back down the A gap, where now the center has either turned his head to the left or the right, and that's an easy path to the quarterback. So as far as Kristen Wilkinson is concerned, yeah, I mean, is he a decent, pass rusher? Absolutely. But if you're trying to determine, well, hey, is this going to be the game where he gets 4 sacks? Probably not, because when you look at the Washington team, they had a bunch of first rounders on that squad, and Jonathan Allen being one of those guys. And all it has to do is, like, if you isolate from an offensive standpoint, say we're going to bring our tight ends and we're going to chip these guys. We're going to use our running backs and we're going to chip them. And what I mean by chip them, let those guys get upfield, let them get their hands on the tackle, and you take your elbow and you put it right there in their midsection. That eventually will slow those guys down. So while Christian has been really active in his first 2 games, trying to determine how productive he's going to be against the Broncos on Sunday, to me, that you can't really predict that, because offensively, when you have edge rushers coming upfield, you throw quick passes, right? Because when you think about your quarterback being in the shotgun, think about that distance. That's 6 yards from the line of scrimmage, right? So you got to actually run 8 to 9 yards to get to the quarterback. And if you're being chipped at the line of scrimmage and they're throwing quick passes, you're going to get frustrated, right? You're going to get frustrated. So that's how I feel about that, and we'll see how things work out on Sunday.
Go ahead, Brandon.
How are you feeling about the Denver's receiving core? Like, I know Jerry Jeudy hasn't been getting as much active. I don't know if he's still coming off injury, and it seems like their rookie has been doing a lot of their big plays. So how are you feeling about them and their receiving core?
I like the receiving core because in the first game they were a void of talent, of speed, with Jerry Jeudy being out of the lineup with a hamstring injury. And even though they had Marvin Mims Jr., he wasn't utilized as much as he should have been. So each week is different. When you have a bunch of mouths to feed offensively, you can't feature the same guy over and over again, because the defense will begin to hone in on those particular players. But Cortland is a big body wide receiver. Jordan Humphrey is a big body wide receiver, can make those catches across the middle and in the end zone. And from a speed standpoint, you have Marvin Mims and you have Jerry Jeudy. Your possession receiver now becomes Brandon Johnson. But there's a guy who scored last week, a rookie running back, undrafted guy, at a Youngstown State, that I thought that he should have been involved more in week 1 and week 2. And he reminds me a lot of Raheem Mostert, and that's Jaleel McLaughlin. I mean, when Mostert was with us in San Francisco, he was a gunner because he had speed. And then they used him as maybe that 3rd or 4th running back because he did have that speed and that burst. Jaleel McLaughlin has that same speed and that same burst, but so far he hasn't been deployed in Sean Payton's offense like we've seen Alvin Kamara when Sean Payton was with the Saints. So you never know. Depending on what defense you're facing, your game plan looks a little different. You don't run the same game plan against every single opponent every week. So the Broncos have receivers and they have running backs, but they got to get those guys into a rhythm in the flow of the game early.
Go ahead, Chad.
Hey Nick, I'm not sure how much longer we have for you. Do you have any time for a few more questions with us?
I got a couple of minutes.
All right, cool. Um, hey, man, what was it like playing with Champ Bailey, man? Just slightly off topic, man. I know he's one of the greats. What was that like? And could you maybe have any cool stories from your playing time that you could share with us?
Well, it was a blessing playing with Champ, and the fact that I went to Georgia Tech and he went to Georgia. Usually, you wouldn't hear me saying things about a guy who went to Georgia, but he's earned it. He's one hell of a player. The same way that you see him play on game day is the exact way that he practiced. And some guys in the NFL, some guys are gamers. Some guys just practice well and they don't play well in games, but he did both. He did both at a high level. And here's a real quick story about Champ. One time we were sitting in our defensive back meeting room, and our coach was asking everyone questions. Now we all knew that after practice sometimes you may be tired, you may doze off. So Champ was in the front row, and our DB coach was sitting in the second row, catty corner to him, so he couldn't really see him. But we all knew Champ was asleep. So he's asking these questions, and he asked Champ a question. Champ wakes up, answers the question correctly, then goes back to sleep. And we're sitting in the room, and I'm sitting next to John Lynch, and I'm saying, man, this is not even fair. First of all, he's got this God-given talent, and then second, he falls asleep, answers the question, and gets it correct, and goes back to sleep. I was like, man, this is just a different dude. He's just a different dude.
Yeah,
Dope story, man.
we have a couple all-time greats at DB in
Xavier
my
Howard,
opinion,
Jalen
and
Ramsey,
right now
Kaden
for
Cole,
us.
who Nick Needham.
Right,
Whatever you want to do.
right. What are your thoughts on the Dolphins secondary, and how do you expect for the Broncos to attack them this upcoming weekend?
Well, what's interesting is Eli Apple, the Broncos are quite familiar with him from his days with Cincinnati. And with Eli Apple, he is a very aggressive corner, just like a Jalen Ramsey. And those guys, and this is what happens to you being an aggressive corner trying to make plays, it opens you up for double moves, right? And that's the one you think you got to be careful. That's why establishing the run game and play action is so important, because you're going to get, and I bet this is kind of the mentality that and of the Miami Dolphins DBs. Well, we're looking at the Broncos receivers and saying, man, those guys hadn't done anything yet, and we don't have to fear them. But arrogance is one of the biggest kind of drawbacks for all of us. You go into a situation thinking that you already won, and then that's how you set yourself up to lose. So if those guys come into this game with the mindset that, hey man, we can cover that group of guys, go right ahead, but they're going to find themselves on the short end of the stick. So once again, the Dolphins have some talent, but they are susceptible to double moves.
Go ahead, Brando.
I've noticed that you've only 2 points of a difference for both games combined, and then you guys have also been on the level of the time of possession. Where is it do you think they're falling short in that aspect of, like, you guys are just dead even with your opponents on basically every stat but winning?
Well, it comes down to drive killers. Sometimes when you have momentum and you're moving the ball, there's always something that happens to the Broncos. You go to the Raiders game, you go to the game against the Commanders, the Broncos moved the ball. Once they got into what we call the high red zone. So the high red zone is 20 yards going in. The low red zone, we consider 10 yards going in. When the Broncos have gotten into the high red zone, there's always been some catastrophic situation. Either there's a holding call that takes them out of scoring position, and now they have to settle for a field goal, or someone across the offensive line allows pressure. The open receiver is there. Russ can't find him because there's a hand in his face. He gets flushed, and then now either he scrambles and he's short of the first down. So it's kind of like death by 1,000 cuts. It's been self-inflicting wounds. That's why it's been so frustrating to watch this team, because they should be 2-0, but they're not, because there's always self-inflicting wounds. You know what? If one person makes a mistake, it's not going to kill you. But if you have 9, 10 guys making mistakes throughout the games in critical moments, it is definitely going to hurt you big time. And that seems to be their biggest enemy, themselves.
So, but I didn't get a chance to ask that. Larry, I heard something today. I forgot which media outlet it was, that they was having issues with getting the play calling in from Sean Payton to Russell Wilson. Like, why is that an issue now? Like, for Sean Payton, shouldn't he know that was an issue before getting into games? Like, to Russell Wilson going into a wrist pad, like Russell Wilson supposed to be an MVP quarterback, and he's a Super Bowl winning coach. Like, y'all just now figuring out you have to do something different as far as the play calling. Do y'all find that an issue?
It is an issue, but understand this about just the NFL overall. Doesn't make a difference how long you play in this league. Doesn't make a difference how long you coach in this league. If you are in the new system, it is going to take some time. Here's a little story. Here's the actual fact. When Peyton Manning came to the Denver Broncos and Gary Kubiak was the offensive coordinator, do you know he had trouble with Gary Kubiak's scheme? And the reason he had trouble is because he had spent so many years in a coach uniform running the same scheme that he knew it inside out, and he can call plays on his own. When you join a new coach and there's a new scheme, everything is different. You get the verbiage is different. Site adjustments are different. And you have to keep this in mind. Every single week you play an opponent, your game plan changes. You will never run the same game plan from week 1 to week 17. You will not. That game plan will be tweaked at some point. So now understanding what those adjustments are in live game situations, when someone's trying to take your head off, and oh, by the way, I know this for a fact. Have you ever heard an offensive coordinator give a quarterback an offensive play in the huddle? If you haven't, you got to watch some videos, some NFL films footage. It will blow your mind, because those plays are so long. And you got to think, you got the green dot on your helmet, and they're trying to speak to you through a mic in your helmet. And sometimes you may not get all the plays or all the nuances of that play. I'm not opposed to going to a wristband. And sometimes there's an idea, if a quarterback is wearing a wristband, and if he's been in the league a long time, guess what? That means he lacks football acumen, because he's wearing a damn wristband. I can tell you, nope. When I was a defensive player, we wore wristbands when we faced Peyton Manning, because he would try to read our defenses, and then sometimes they would go hurry up. So we had to make sure that we can go, hey, man, here's play number 1, 2, or 3. You read what's on your wristband and you play that call. So I don't think that it's a bad thing for the Broncos to go to a wristband, but also it is incumbent on the coach to shorten down the damn play call. Play calls don't have to be that long. You only have but so much time to, one, just think about it. Let me walk you through the mind of a quarterback, all right? First of all, you got to get the call from the sideline. You got to now remember what they called, give it to every single person in the huddle, and hope that no one says, hey, man, can you repeat that again? Then you got to go to the line of scrimmage, hoping that you have enough time to survey the field to see, okay, well, what's my number one matchup? Okay, is the defense creeping down? Are they in man, zone, cover 2, cover 3? Hey, the ball is snapped. These are all the things that quarterbacks have to think about, right? It sounds easy that you think you've been in the league a long time. These are things that you should know. But all it takes is one little speed bump to take you out of rhythm. And what do we hear all the time when we talk about quarterbacks? We talk about offensive play calling. You got to get the quarterback in the rhythm, right? And we're all creatures of habit. For me, I used to get to the game 3-4 hours early just to walk the field. If somehow I got to the game 2 hours early, it messed up my whole routine. My whole rhythm was thrown out of whack. And the first 20 plays of the game, I'm not in sync. So these are the things that you guys should think about when you're watching football games from here on out, whether it's high school, college, especially in the pros. Playing that position is not easy. And if you can't get the call in and you're not hearing it the right way, it's going to make it really difficult to stay in the rhythm.
I
Hey
appreciate
Nick,
that because
imagine doing all. My bad.
people were killing Mike McDaniel for that last year when we had issues getting the plays in our time. So just hearing it from an outsider and dealing with Sean Payton, so people
And
can get
also that,
context
my
to
bad, OG, and
that.
also that the wristband thing, man, because a lot of people, well, I don't know if you encountered it, but they were trying to talk about Tua because he was wearing. I'm like, bro, why is it dumb to have your plays right here? Like, you think it's a memory thing? You know how much things is going on in the game, and you want me to use my memory right now to recite a crazy play in a West Coast offense? You're crazy, man.
Well, here's something else to think about too. And I can understand a quarterback's position, but I'm gonna give it to you in a different way, and I'm gonna give it to you real. Think about being African American quarterback or minority quarterback for that matter. The idea is that they already think that you're not smart enough, right? So to ask you to wear the wristbands, you may find it insulting because you say, okay, well, maybe my white counterparts are not doing that. So people, if I wear a wristband, people are probably going to think that I'm incompetent and I cannot play the position. So I understand the pushback for it. I totally get it, right? Because you don't want people to think that, oh, well, he's ill-equipped to deal with this. Think about with Tua. Tua's had a lot of concussions where we think about, well, what Tua's going to be long-term 20 years from now when the game is over. So now you're thinking, okay, I've had a couple concussions. People think I'm a bad quarterback as is, and you ask me to wear a wristband, right? That's going to make people think that, one, the concussions are impacting me sooner than people thought, and then I'm incapable of remembering plays. That's the dilemma that these quarterbacks deal with, and that's what's going through their mind. Even though I still think at the same time, you say that to hell with those people and what they think about you. The only thing that matters is trying to win games, but that's easy for me to say because I'm not a black quarterback playing in this league.
Yo, those are
Go ahead,
those are
Freddie.
bars, man. Those are bars.
Somebody else. I appreciate the answer.
Those are bars right there, man.
Yeah, I ain't think about that.
Yeah,
Bars.
you don't think about it, but it's true, man. Like, I mean, if you put it into your job and you'd be like, hey man, you gotta wear this in your job, but your counterpart don't do, you be like, hey man, is it because of this? So yeah, it makes perfect sense, man. I really
Hey,
never.
hey, Nick, before you go, man, I want to thank you again, man. I implore everyone in the room to go ahead and give Nick a follow, man. It's been great. You got a prediction for this week, this Sunday's game?
Well, for me, I just look at it. If the Broncos play the same way that they played last week, and with the inconsistencies of the second half, it could be a long day for them against Miami because Miami has more of a potent offense than the Commanders had. So right now, as it stands today, and today is Tuesday at 2:41 here in Denver, I would say at this time I got the Dolphins winning this game.
Oh, hey,
Thank you.
respect, man.
Appreciate
Hey, you
that.
know what, Nick, man, you've been the truest person we had, man. Respect.
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
Salute, my brother,
Let
man.
me, hey,
Listen,
let me jump in real quick because I'm here at work. I can't. Hey, Nick, I
wow.
appreciate you. I appreciate you jumping in. This is Coach. Appreciate you jumping in and give us your time. I got a quick question and I got to get off because I'm here at work. Finish this question. The Dolphins will win the game if they do this, or the Broncos will win if they do this. Thanks
Wow.
again.
He stole my question. I always do that.
Okay, the Broncos win if they can keep Russell Wilson upright and limit the Dolphins to less than 2 sacks, they win the game. So, and the Dolphins win the game is if they are able to get 3 explosive plays, 2 to 3 explosive plays, because those explosive plays are momentum killers. And that's the thing that's plagued the Broncos. Something goes bad. It seems as though the mentality is like, oh, here we go again, and things kind of fall apart. So those are the 2 scenarios that could play out for either side.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
No problem, man. I believe in keeping it real is one of the reasons I kind of got into this broadcast business, because I got tired of people giving fans the wrong perspective. And my idea is that I'm not trying to tell fans what to think. I'm just going to present it to you from the fact standpoint, and I'm going to let you make your own determination. So I like to keep it real.
What they say, Nick, you can take a horse to the water, but you can't make them drink.
Can't make
Like
them.
that.
I can't make them drink.
Right, exactly.
Hey, Nick, appreciate you, man. It's been great, man. Hey, salute to you doing your thing, man. We wish you all success outside of this week's game, of course, in your Broncos.
Oh
But
yeah, we
yeah,
ate.
man,
Yeah,
appreciate you, bro.
we 8-1 against y'all. Last time y'all won, it was Tebow. I just wanted you to know that.
No,
Damn.
wait. Let's be fair. They beat Tua, so Tua needs it back
Yeah,
again.
Yeah,
That's what
hey,
I
the
have to
last
We
say.
gotta get
time,
it
hey,
back
the
in
last
blood,
time
man.
Tua got benched, man. Tua got benched the last time we played you guys, man. So, and between him and Fangio's, revenge, we're hoping for, a bit of a, angriness and playing into, the game plan and coming with that extra fire. You know what I'm talking about? But
Well,
we'll see.
it's going to be interesting because now you're talking about Vance Joseph matching wits for Mike McDaniel, Vic Fangio matching wits with Sean Payton. So it's going to be a fun game. I'm going to be tuned in on Sunday.
Absolutely. I think it's gonna be a good
Sounds
game
like
for sure.
Oh,
sounds like a
last
dance with the
question, Nick.
stars.
I know you don't want to say actual prediction score, but what I would ask you is going to be a high scoring game or a low scoring game. What you think?
Well, based on what I've seen from both of these teams, I go back to the Broncos on Sunday against the Commanders and the Dolphins against the Chargers. I mean, this could be another high-scoring affair because both teams have the ability to push the ball down the field vertically, but now it comes down to consistency. Can you keep the offense in somewhat of a rhythm, and can you overcome or prevent making a big mistake where you're going to have to overcome the momentum swing? So this game has the potential to be a high-scoring game.
Nick, man, again, appreciate you for coming through, man. Thank you for taking the time behind enemy lines and give us a perspective from the Broncos side. Again, please follow him. And man, see you at the game. Are you gonna be at the game, or are you gonna just watch it?
No, man, I wish I could come home to watch the game, but I have other responsibilities, media responsibilities
Hey,
here.
wait. Before you let Nick go, how are we gonna take care of this bet?
Well, I mean, that's on you to figure out. I already said that I'll do the
All right.
push-ups, but
I'll get you on the back channels then.
yes, yeah.
Thanks again, Nick.
All
Thanks,
right,
Nick.
man.
Man, you're awesome, man. Appreciate you, man.
All right, man. You
Everybody
guys be
follow
easy.
Nick, man. Appreciate you. Salute to you, bro. Appreciate you.
All right, salute to you guys.